you looking for healthier, fuller hair? Do you want extra money for bills, trips, extracurricular activities for your kids, or do you want to replace your entire income? Monat is the answer. Our products are Leaping Bunny certified, vegan, and Monat can be used by anyone, including your kids and pets. Message me on my Instagram to partner with me. Founder shares are available, and as a market partner, you have access to uncapped bonuses, 45% commission, 35 to 55% off discounts, on top of all-inclusive paid trips. Right now, I also have a free gift for anyone that partners with me, so don't miss out. You can message me on my Instagram at LizChilvers86.
We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you,
good evening, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is worst 11 ever at NUFC Matters. It's a little series that we've knocked together. The only thing that you can do on here is pick players who don't play for the football club anymore, don't have current contracts with Newcastle United. So we are picking a certain era. But yeah, you can pick your first 11, you can pick your substitutes, and then you can pick your manager. And today we've got Magnus from Iceland who is going to pick his. Good evening, Magnus. How are you?
Good evening, Steve. How are you doing, man? Yeah, I think I am ready with my worst 11. It was a bit of a challenge, I would say.
Okay, good stuff. Who's your goalkeeper?
My goalkeeper, when it comes to the goalkeepers, I've been really impressed with our goalkeepers through the time. So it took a little bit of time to find the right guy, or the wrong guy in this case. So for me, with all the great goalkeepers that we have, I could only find one that didn't quite fulfill the potential that I was expecting of him, and that was Mats Sells. He may come back to haunt me because he's already back in the Premier League with Nottingham Forest, but yeah, I really didn't feel he was what we expected him to be. He played 9 games for the team, and this was during a time that we actually were relegated. So if we couldn't find a place in the team then there must have been something seriously wrong that maybe we didn't see. But definitely Rafa Benitez saw it.
Yeah, it was a strange situation, really, because, he came to us in 2016 on a reported 5-year contract, and he cost us £6.5 million. And I remember he made his debut in the Championship against Fulham on the 5th of August. He then went on a really good run. He kept 4 clean sheets, but he came under massive criticism, which can happen at a club like ours, when he allowed a late equaliser from Tishbola at Aston Villa in September. He was backed by his manager, as you rightly say, Rafa Benitez, during the week, but he lost his place to Carl Darlow against Norwich City. And because of that, that reached his country, Belgium. He had a lot of negative press in Belgium. And it wasn't until the League Cup that Sells got back in the team. He did have another clean sheet, but he just fell out of favour at the club, and he went on loan to Anderlecht in 2017, and we never saw him again. But you're quite right. He's back now. He's at Nottingham Forest. So let's hope he doesn't come back to haunt us, mate. But that's your...
No, and what you say with the first 4 clean sheets that we saw, we were really quite hopeful with this guy, and we didn't really see much more of him after that. So like you say, I really hope he doesn't. Maybe he's listening. You know, I really don't. Okay, the fact of the matter is, I don't remember a lot of horrible Newcastle goalkeepers, because I mean, I'm only talking in the era that I have been in. You know, obviously my opinion and this whole team reflects on that. So during my time, we had superstars like Shea Given, Shaka Hislop, Pavel Sinčák. We had loads of good keepers. Tim Krul. I really never feel like we had a horrible keeper. So this was the only one that I could think of.
Okay, mate. You've gone for a back 3. So who's the first defender that you're going to give us?
Yeah, the reason I went for a back 3 is because again, I don't remember a lot of horrendous or sort of awful fullbacks, you know. So that's why I went for 3 centre backs at the back, and the very first name that I can mention is gonna be Titus Bramble, and it's a shame to say, because he was such a hot prospect when he came to the club. I really, really wanted him to be successful. It just didn't turn out to that way. But he still was with the team for like 5 years, and I'll never forget that he scored 3 goals, 105 games, and but it was a disappointment. This was a blunder. He was a hot prospect. He was in the youth teams of England. I really wanted him to be successful. He wasn't. He leaked in lots of goals. To me, it was a lot of the times on his backside. And as hopeful as I was, maybe I'm deluded. I really wanted him to be successful. He wasn't. And this was a joke that lasted for 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned him on another podcast. One of the other lads selected Titus, and I mean, when he came in, he was like a colossus. He came in for £6 million from Ipswich, and Sir Bobby Robson really, did know a player, and he signed him, but he just never realised his potential. And Titus was one of the lads who used to like to burn the candle at both ends. He used to like a night out in Newcastle, and I think part of the reason was because you kind of not everybody can do that, and the game's moved on and had moved on in the early noughties. I remember at the end of the 2003-2004 season, readers of the Football email newsletter, The Fiver, voted Bramble as the worst player in the Premier League. I mean, that tells you where he was actually at. But he did have the knack of getting the odd goal, and that goal he scored against Chelsea at the end of the season in 2006, it actually secured qualification for the Intertoto Cup. Is probably one of the good memories that Titus will have. He also scored in the UEFA Cup with a header against FK Ventspils, the Latvian team. But he just never really realised his potential, and he had a bad injury, and we never saw him again. He was off to Wigan on a free transfer, and ended up playing for our rivals as well. Played for Sunderland after that. So
I
can
know
see
that is crazy.
I can see why he's in your team, though, mate. I can see why he's in your team. So you've gone for 3 centre halves. Who's your next one?
Yeah, my next one. You did see him a lot, Bramble maybe a lot on the nightlife, as you were kind of doing the different jobs back then. Either way, my next one is gonna be. Well, I never understood why, and it really has nothing to do with the career that this man had, because it was outstanding. But whoever decided to take this man on at that stage in his career, I don't understand why anybody thought that was a good idea. Sol Campbell came to us in 2010, the year after we got relegated, if I remember correctly. He had a great career. There's no questioning about it. You know, he was great with Arsenal, and wherever he went, he had a great career with England. But when he was totally overweight when he came to us. He didn't seem interested. I'm sorry to say, this was never a great idea. I think he only played 7 games, so our management at least realized pretty fast and took matters in their hands. But this was never a great idea, and I'm sorry to say, for such a huge English character, this was an awful idea, and he should have never come. And he should have he could have prolonged his career. He actually came to Iceland, not to play football though. He's a friend of Herman Hreiðarsson at Portsmouth. He's been here a few times, and I rate the guy. He's had a great career, but going to Newcastle at that time in his career was an awful idea, in my opinion. He played only 7 games, and he was really out of place. He had no reason to be in the Premier League. I'm really sorry to say.
Yeah, out of shape as well, I would have to say. Wasn't at his fittest, and 7 games, a pitiful amount of games to play. 1-year contract he took at Newcastle, and then was given a chance to leave. They didn't renew his contract, and he was a free agent under Alan Pardew. So that is Sol Campbell. Who makes up the trio at the back?
Well, it's going to have to be Jan-Alain Bomsong. I mean, I don't really even remember a single good game with him. He played actually 47 games in the season 2005-06. So he must have been he was first team regular. We really believed in the guy. If I remember correctly, we bought him for 8 million after he from one of the Scottish clubs, Celtic, I think. And what an awful idea. He, not that I can confirm it, but must have been in France national team when they were at their best. So it was easy to overrate some of their players. But I saw a lot more bad or I saw a lot of mistakes from this guy, and he often tried to make it look all right, and there were players around him that actually made damage control a little bit easier on the eye. But what an awful signing, because I think Celtic signed him at a free transfer. He was in no man's land when we, I think, splashed the cash and bought him for 8 million. Back then, there was a lot of money. I feel like 2005 to 2006 were an awful signing, and I'm glad and pleased to say that it only lasted for 1 season.
I mean, this really was the strangest of transfers. I mean, he'd gone to Rangers on a free transfer. Newcastle could have had him.
Rangers.
Yeah, Newcastle could have had him from Rangers for, probably for a lot less. But there was an insistence on paying £8 million. Lots of queries over that transfer. They never really got to the bottom of it. He played 47 games in a year for Newcastle, and his first season was slightly better than his second season, but he was playing alongside Titus Bramble as well. So it wasn't the greatest of partnerships, and I think we were all pleased to see Jean-Alexander Boumsong leave the club. So that is goalkeeper and our three at the back. We're into the midfield now, mate. So who we're going to have next?
Well, should we just start on the what we would call the right flank? Sorry, that would be we would go on the French side first. So I'd say Gabriel Obertan.
Okay.
Let's bring him in. Okay, I mean, I know the positions may not be perfect, and I've done 3-4-3 for a certain reason. So for me, this was a horrible decision. I remember Alan Pardew being the manager at the time, and he had a little bit of an issue with Joey Barton at the time because social media was becoming a bit of a thing, some of our players were starting to get in trouble because of social media. They were maybe getting carried away or saying too much of the truth. People can't always handle the truth. And apparently he phoned up a friend. He phoned a friend called Sir Alex Ferguson and asked on a little bit of advice. He'd gone through a lot of things with passing backs and all the sort of media fiasco that kind of hit them like a rock. So he called his friend Sir Alex Ferguson on this is what I heard, asking him on advice, how do I deal with all this social media fiasco. It looked like the phone call just ended up in, do you have any midfielders? Because I'm struggling a little bit over here. And this phone call almost seemed to have ended in a sale between the two clubs. And again, I've never been very impressed when we buy players from rivals, let alone Man United or Liverpool, and usually they are rejects if they're offering them to us. And this was a talking case of that. Sir Alex Ferguson wanted to get rid of the player. Alan Pardew needed the player, and we took him on. And the rest, a little bit of history. This is a signing that he must have signed a 5-year contract, and he played only 58 games in 5 years. This is awful. This is awful stuff.
And scored 2 goals.
He scored 2 goals in those. And this is a 5-year time, and okay, he's supposed to be attacking midfielder. The goals that he scored are actually were quite impressive. But all in all, I think this was an awful idea. Another awful idea. Another reject from Man United. We should never do business with them. They are not not our friends, and they will sell us if it benefits them. So let's think twice before we ever buy a player or even loan a player from them, because this is probably something that is for their own benefit. And this was definitely one case of that. I was very disappointed in this player. Some of the Man United fans that I know were just like, oh, you're lucky to get him. We really had hopes for him, No. He's still playing today, so I don't want to be too horrible. He's playing in America, as far as I know, and I wish him all the best. This didn't go too well, but I have to give him, these were dark times of Newcastle, and it wasn't really easy to be a Newcastle player at the time. This was horrible times, and I don't want to be too harsh on him because he tried his best, I guess, but this wasn't a great fit.
Okay, who's next in your midfield?
Next in the midfield would be we're going to go from right to left. So Remy Cabella. Wow, how excited I was when this was in the middle of the French Revolution. I was really excited about this player. I even went to my barber and got the same haircut. That was a joke that lasted the whole season. I had that haircut, and I gladly carried that around. It's like, Cabella, he's my man. He's still playing today. I think he's been pretty successful. I think he's with Lille today. But as much as I really, I really wanted this to be a successful move. But these were times that, not that I'm going to say that the scouting team was like not trying their best, but our owner was not trying their best. And he could see a lot of bargains, and he didn't really think too much about what he was buying. That's how I feel anyway. I mean, allegedly. An awful time. He only played 31 games in 2 seasons, and he scored only 1 goal. So I don't know, maybe he should have been more creative, but I don't really think there's a lot of assists there either. And as much as I wanted this to work, it really didn't. And he's an awful sort of marker on that era. We had 5 or 6 French players. Only 2 of them were any good. He was not one of them.
Yeah, another failure in the French Revolution. Another one who came in on an absolutely crazy 6-year contract. £8 million were paid for him as well. And the only goal he scored was against Hull City in January 2015, a 3-0 win and a goal for Cabella. But the haircut was enough to put me off, I'm afraid. Next midfielder, Magnus.
Good thing you didn't meet me that time, yeah?
Next midfielder, Magnus, please.
Yes, I'm going to go with this might not be what everybody thinks, but most of the times when we sign a player, I'm really pleased about it. Other times, I have to kind of accept players. I guess I can mention Anthony Gordon a little bit to the equation there, because he was already like a feisty player against us, and many people questioned him. I liked him. On the other hand, with regards to Lee Boyer, which is my next midfielder, I just could not accept that we were buying him. I never took him into acceptance. Okay, I tried my best to get behind him, but I just couldn't. I just didn't like the guy. I never did. And the fact, okay, he stayed there for a few years. He stayed with us for 3 years, 79 games and 6 goals. 79 games is quite a lot for only 6 goals. But it was just the way I'd seen him in the past with Leeds. He was absolutely a feisty guy. I don't mind a little bit of feistiness and, showing that you stand in your legs and you stand up for your fellas and your team. But to me, he was just not a nice guy. He was too feisty, or how to explain it without saying bad words. I didn't like it. I never did, and it's the only name in the history of Newcastle that I just couldn't get behind. And the fact of the matter that he ends up attacking a fellow team player on the pitch, we all remember that. It's not so much the two red cards that happened that day. It's the fact of the matter that Bobby Robson is your manager, and you choose to do something as ridiculous as to attack your own teammate on the pitch. It just completely confirmed why I could never get behind this guy. I mean, I know he's grown up today and he's a different person, but back then, to me, I could never accept the guy, and this was just the icing on the cake. What happened on that pitch when both him and Kieran Dyer was kicked off the pitch, and for me, it's an all-time low moment in the history of following the team. So yeah, that was I mean, that plays a big part in why I'm picking him on this team.
Yeah, I can understand, mate. I can understand. You don't need to say any more. So you've got one more midfielder to go. Who's next?
Yes. Some people might disagree with this, but Jack Colback is definitely always going to make my team. Another player that I saw with a bright future, and he had scored a couple of goals with Sunderland, and
we are going to have a quick ad break. We'll come back because Magnus's internet is just failed. We'll have a quick ad break. We'll be back after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins. You can find their website at skipsandbins.com. Contact us, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel. They are the Travel and Tourism Award winners in 2024. Their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com or telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. A big thanks to Media Arts. You can find them at www.media-arts.co.uk. And don't forget, we are a podcast. You can find us on iTunes or Spotify or other podcast providers. If you want to help the channel grow, then hit the like button, the little thumb underneath the video, click share and share to your social media, or join the channel for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to take out a one-off payment membership, go to nufcmatters.com and hit membership. And for a £25 fee, you get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card. You can also put a smartphone over the top of this QR code. It'll take you straight there. And don't forget, we also help the food bank on this channel. NUFCfansfoodbank.co.uk is a website where you can make a virtual donation today. Okay, we are back with Magnus's 11. He had a couple of internet issues, but we are back, and we were just about to talk about another midfielder in his team, Jack Colback.
Jack Colback, yes, another player that I really wanted to like, and I got behind him. He stayed with us for quite a few years, the 2014 to 2020. Crazy to say. But I had only seen him score a couple of goals for Sunderland when we signed him, and I really wanted this to work, but this was a relationship that got just sour and sour. He didn't have the best of luck with us. And when I look at the numbers, he's there from 2014 till 2020, and he plays 93 games and scores 5 goals. And one of those years we are in the championship. So I don't know what else to say. For me, he's a great championship player. It never really worked out in Newcastle, and the relationship got very sour in the end. It absolutely doesn't help that he played for Sunderland before. I wasn't happy with his time at Newcastle, and I wish him all the best because he's still playing and he's still one of ours. I hope I'm not offending him or anything like that. He tried his best, but this wasn't a good match. No.
Okay, we're on to your front line. Who are your forwards? Let's go for your first one.
Well, the one that I remember the most, it's gonna be Daniel Cordon with his ponytail and his ridiculous hairband. I'm sorry. I just don't understand how this guy came to the team. He only ever had one season in Europe with us. Every time you Google him, he'll show this picture because this must have been the peak of his career. He was nowhere near any of the international, like not even under 15 or anything like that in his home country. I don't understand how he got to Newcastle. This must have been a great moment for him. But Daniel Cordon, okay, this was just a one season. So, I mean, I guess it's not the worst when a team realizes and takes matters in their own hands the following season. But he played 21 games, but he scored 2 goals. So, we've seen worse records. But to me, when I saw him play, he didn't hold the ball. He didn't pass the ball. How he managed to score them 2 goals, I don't remember seeing them, and I don't understand how it actually developed.
Strange transfer that really is. And his Wikipedia page is probably one of the smallest pages that you could ever find. He actually scored 2 goals in the league, but he scored a goal in the cup as well. He scored a league goal against Derby. He scored a league goal against Tottenham, and he scored a goal in the League Cup against Bradford City. And Newcastle paid £500,000 for him. And with the exception of Vélez Sarsfield, where he started from, and San Lorenzo, where he went to after Newcastle, he didn't stay longer than a year at any club that he was at. So I think he got found out at most places, which is no surprise. But must have been a nice lad, good in interview, just not very good on the football pitch. So.
Yeah, and I mean, he had a name that, sort of like a ponytail. He had maybe a name that sounded almost like he could be a superstar. So
yeah, I know what you mean.
I'm just considering maybe people went a little bit too much for it sounds like he could be a star.
Yeah, he could be, but he wasn't. Your next
he wasn't,
striker,
and
then.
it wasn't to be. Didn't happen that time. So all the best to him. If he's listening or watching, I'm sure he finished his career with some decency, and he had a great time in the home country. All the best to him. I don't mean any hard feelings. So this is just how I experienced it on the pitch.
Who's next?
Next, it's going to have to be Stefan Kivarch. I barely remember even watching him in this shirt. I've seen. I saw, and I was watching a lot of football in the World Cup 1998 when France was the best team. He was part of that team, but when you look more closely, I don't think he ever scored a goal in that World Cup. And I think, again, we maybe went a little bit blindly into buying a World Cup winner because he was a World Cup winner. He must be half decent. It really wasn't. It looked like he only stayed 1998, so he must not have even made it through a whole season by the looks of this.
A change of manager didn't help. Kenny Dalglish signed him, and that was the problem. Then Kenny Dalglish got sacked, and he played 40 games for Kenny Dalglish. Ruud Gullit came in and sold him to Rangers for $3.5 million.
All right. So it must have been only a half a season, really, 4 games. But he scored 1 goal, so 25% goal ratio. So maybe I'm being too harsh on him.
Scored against Liverpool as well on his debut.
Oh, well, that's the same thing as I think. Remember Paul Dummett when he scored against Liverpool?
Yeah, you know, it's not it's not
forever in our heart for that. Forever.
I tell you, when you sent me your list and I went through it, it was interesting because when he was at Rangers, Magnus, he played 14 games for Rangers in 1988 and 1999, that was all he was there for a year. He scored 5 goals, and in that season, he won the treble with Rangers, and he scored a goal in the cup final.
No way!
And he only played 14 games. Incredible. 3 medals. Right. 3 medals, a goal in a cup final, and he only played 14 games. Absolutely incredible.
So he's just one of them guys you just never know. You know, I mean, he could be like your best star in a few minutes, and he could just disappear and be nowhere seen.
Yeah, and he's a World Cup winner, of course, which is why Newcastle United signed him. And I
don't think against that. We are looking at Nico Gonzalez right now, and I think very highly of him. And I'm not going to get too carried away here, but that's a huge huge character that also won the World Cup. I would like to see him soon.
So one more player before we get to your substitutes. Who is going to make that front 3 up?
Well, it's going to have to be Cisco. I was living in Spain at the time, and I was quite involved in the Spanish football at the time, and I didn't have a clue who the guy was. I'd heard a lot about Fernando Torres and Albert Luque at the time, and but this guy I'd never even heard of until he had already signed for us. This is during the Ruud Gullit time, and I think this is a work of Dennis Weiss, and I don't know if Joe Kinner was involved as well, but what an absolute blunder of a signing. They could barely even loan him away after signing him. You're going to have to tell me how much it was, because I don't have those numbers.
Newcastle signed him for a reported £5.7 million, and he played 9 games and he scored 1 goal.
Yeah, he scored the goal. Do you remember who that was against? Or you remember absolutely everything. You're like Gibbo here.
He made his debut for the club in a 2-1 defeat against Hull, and he scored in that game. And then after 4 months at the club, Newcastle tried to sign him because he was that bad. FIFA blocked the transfer. They didn't allow for a player to be registered for 3 clubs in 1 season, so we basically had to keep him. And then a couple of months later, he put a statement out without the club's permission, I think, apparently saying he made a mistake by moving to the club. Newcastle were then, of course, relegated. Cisco stated he was unsure whether he wanted to stay, but eventually went on to play for Racing Santander. But yeah, just incredible, really, to think that we even considered this guy as a potential striker in the Premier League was just bizarre. It really was.
And we tried to loan him out. He was loaned out twice.
Yeah, came back.
I lived in Spain for a few years, for 7 years, and this seems to be a little bit common with the Spanish players. I mean, I know Jesus Navas never liked it in Man United. I mean, we have the story of Marcelino with us. Okay, the only thing I can relate to this story is I loved Spain very much myself, and I miss it. I'm a little bit homesick from it, after not seeing the sun all summer. So I can kind of relate a little bit to them, but everybody is different. Some people just fit in wherever they go, and some people always keep looking back. And, homesickness is a very common thing with the Spanish lads.
The problem was Newcastle wanted to get rid of him after 4 months. And we signed him in 2008. He didn't officially leave the club until 2013. His wages must have been that good. And I mean, he made sporadic appearances. I remember when Newcastle beat Aston Villa 6-0, he came on to set Andy Carroll's hat-trick up. But then he got red carded in an off-the-ball incident in a reserves game. He was suspended for 3 games. Then he found himself down the pecking order. He was behind Amiobi, Carroll, Lovenkrands, Niall Ranger. He went back out on loan again. Then he came back in again in 2012. He revealed he could leave Newcastle, but then he opted to stay. He played in the reserves again. He scored a hat-trick against Stoke City in the reserves. But then, he just eventually his contract was terminated in 2013. And he was named by the Newcastle Evening Chronicle one of the club's worst ever strikers. And 5 years at the club, 9 games, 1 goal. I can see 100% why he would be in a lot of people's teams.
Yes, and as much as I adore my sort of adopted nation, Spain, and this was not to be, and we try to make it work, and this was not a match made in heaven here.
Okay, you've got 3 substitutes. Name your first one.
Right. This was the hardest bit because I had a fair few options, but I'm gonna start with the midfielder, and I don't like to be too harsh on the Spanish because I want us to look at that much. So Albert Luque will have to be my number 1 still. There's no going around it. I had a couple of other names there, but I wanted to spare the young brothers because one of them was always injured and the other one was on a loan. Albert Luque, he was a huge star at Deportivo La Coruña in Spain at the time. And I had been, as I was living in Spain at the time, I was very, very hopeful for this signing. It really wasn't to be. I'm thinking maybe they didn't fall in love with the area like most of us have. Then 2005 till 2007, this is 2 seasons and 21 games. Only 1 goal. I didn't see an awful lot of the football that he had to offer, but I rated him as a player when he came to Newcastle. It really wasn't a good fit, and I'm sorry to say, putting another Spanish fellow on the team.
Bad injury really hit him when he came to Newcastle against Fulham. I mean, he had a goal chalked off on his debut against Manchester United at St James's Park, but then the hamstring injury at Fulham put him out of the team, and he never really recovered from that. The 1 goal he did score, of course, Albert Luque wraps it up, was against the Mackhams, against Sunderland. The time we had Derby, I was there. We beat them 4-1. Alan Shearer's last game in a black and white shirt, but Luque did score that wonderful goal. He chipped the ball over Kelvin Davis, and he's been immortalised in a song, if nothing else. 21 games, 1 goal, but it was against Sunderland. So 2 more subs, Magnus. Who's your next?
Yeah, sometimes things just don't work out for you if I continue a little bit with Albert Luque, you know. But we will always remember any goals that go against our Mackhams, you know. So, regardless of being on this team, you know, big respect. Yeah, this was an important one. Every goal against the Mackhams is an important one. Anyway, my last, was it my last one?
Second last.
Second last, that would have to be. Okay, I'm gonna end up with that one. I'm gonna put, and people are probably gonna disagree with me, but I have a little bit of a history with this guy because I'm gonna put Alessandro Pistone. He's the only fullback I put on this team. It's not because of his awful time at Newcastle, but the fact of the matter that I managed to offend him once completely by accident is why I'm putting him on the team. It's just a better story to tell.
Okay, how did you offend him?
You already seen the picture when I met Alan Shearer in the tunnel of Everton.
Yes.
Yes, that day I went into the locker room of Everton, and I was really glad to see a fair few names there. I saw Steve Watson there, and I got a picture taken next to him. I saw big Duncan Ferguson, which I was greatly honored to meet because he had helped us out at a difficult time when Shearer was injured. And then I saw a couple of other Everton players that I recognized. There was Thomas Gravison, who I rate highly, and obviously Wayne Rooney was there as well, 17 years old, 3 years younger than me. I was 20. And I spent a lot of time with those guys in the locker room, and then I just completely walked past the only former Newcastle player. That was Alessandro Pistone. So I managed to offend him unexpectedly. The other guys that were with me told me afterwards, I could have said hello to Pistone, you know. It's like he knew you were a Newcastle fan, you know. Why didn't you say hello to him? It's just like, I have to admit, I wasn't maybe watching every game at the time. I just walked straight past him without noticing that he was one of our own, you know, from the past. It's not because of his horrible performances with us. And there are many, there's at least a couple of other guys that could have taken the place, but I thought this was a story that, you know, I managed to offend him unknowingly once in a locker room at Goodison Park. So I thought I'd throw it in there.
Yeah, I mean, his career at Newcastle, well, it was strained to say the least. And unfortunately for him, he was there 3 years. Again, managerial changes. Kenny Dalglish was the man who signed him for $4.5 million. He was primarily a fullback, but he was asked to play central defence in his debut. Newcastle had injury issues, of course. He did play in the 1998 FA Cup final against Arsenal, and Newcastle, of course, lost that. Some subsequent years they lost to Arsenal and Manchester United. Injuries plagued them as well. Dalglish goes, Hullett comes in, and Pistone wasn't given a squad number. He was forced to train with the reserves along with the likes of Rob Lee, and he was then sent out on loan for 4 months. When Hullett was sacked, Pistone was restored to the first team by Bobby Robson, and he became a first-team regular under Sir Bobby. In his time at Newcastle, he scored 1 league goal, which was against Middlesbrough in May 2000. That was his penultimate appearance for the club. He did go on to Everton, I hasten to add, and had 103 appearances for Everton, scoring 1 goal. Was there for 7 years, so did manage to pick his career back up at Everton. But I think a lot of his misfortune at the club was simply down to the fact that the club was going through a bit of turmoil, And it wasn't until Bobby Robson came in that things got more on an even track. But we've got one more sub, Magnus. Who is it?
My last sub, last but not least. This has to be, I can't go through a whole team without mentioning Michael Owen. Michael Owen it is, and you can just see it on this picture. He never wanted to come. He couldn't even put a smile on his face when he was signing and holding his shirt up and with a full stadium. This is more about attitude because he has he does not have an awful goal ratio. He has 26 goals in 71 games. But his attitude before, we are a club that gave him an open hand when Real Madrid, and I was in Spain at the time, Real Madrid kept him as a super sub. He totally wasn't a guy that could wait on the bench as a super sub. He was way too big. But he had a better goal ratio than Ronaldo at the time. Ronaldo 9 in Real Madrid, even with a lot less minutes. But the way he's spoken about Newcastle before and after, I can never accept. I can never accept how you would slap the hand that took a part in making you as wealthy and rich as you are today. I cannot believe that. Please don't fall out. Yeah. I just don't see why or how you could talk so badly about your employer that actually took you back to England, gave you a chance in being a great partnership with the best striker ever played in Premier League. How he could end up not being a friend of and be beloved by the people. This is, for me, this takes a certain character to not fall in love with the city and not and not take on all the love that the city gives to you. It still baffles me that he could say something like, I've been.
So while Magnus sorts his internet connection out, we'll just go back through his players. Goalkeeper was Matt Sells. He had a back three of Titus Bramble, Sol Campbell, Jean-Alain Boumsong. Midfield, he had Jack Colback, Lee Bowyer, Remy Cabella, Gabriel Obertan, and up front he had Cisco, Daniel Cordoni, Stefan Givosh. And on the bench, Alessandro Pistone, Michael Owen, and Albert Luque. Internet sorted. Magnus, who is the manager of this team?
Well, for me, it's very clear. It's going to have to be Steve McLaren. Again, I'm only talking in the tenor that I remember. And for me, what an awful signing that was. He was already kicking water bottles in pre-season, somewhere in America. He was already kicking off. This was not to be. And again, maybe I'm deluded. Again, I went right behind him. I really wanted this to work. Maybe this was the break that was going to really put him on the map. But his greatest success is going to still always be in Holland, where he actually spoke Dutch. They big team. We small team. I'll never forget when he actually spoke English with Dutch accent. Lovely. But I can understand that. That sometimes happens when you're living in a certain area. I'm not going to be too harsh on him there. But what an awful manager. He asked us to give him 10 games, and we were right at the bottom of the league when we finished those 10 games. And the worst thing is not that. it dragged on and on and on and on past Christmas, if I remember correctly. And the problem was we didn't deal with it there and then. You know, Rafa Benitez came in and it was too little, too late. You know, and that's the sad bit about it all. We could all see it, and it was too little, too late when Rafa Benitez came along. And sorry to say that was our last relegation, and hopefully we never see that darkness ever again.
Here. Magnus, fantastic team. Great to have you on, mate. Thank you so much for battling through the internet in Iceland. I'm sure your team would hold its own amongst the other bad teams. But for now, Magnus, thanks very much for joining us. Thank you and good night.
Thanks for the chat. See you all later. Take care.